Hi, I'm Roy Smalley. I'm the Health and Safety Officer at Mayville Fire Department, and I'll be talking with you now about using the multi-gas meters. Uh, we're going to move on from the lecture portion and get more into hands-on. So our objectives for this part of our class is to describe the characteristics of a multi-gas meter and go over what happens when we turn it on, what information we're going to see, and how to interpret that. And then using that information, you should be able to actually put hands on this 4-gas meter and use it as outlined in your skill drill sheet on 15-3 in your student manual. Now, just a quick review, multi-gas meters will detect several hazards at once. Usually they're known as 3 or 4-gas meters, and ours are specifically 4-gas, calibrated for oxygen, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and flammable gas. They are good not only for overhaul, but for a number of different fireground purposes, including confined space where they can detect and tell you what oxygen levels are. They will detect the presence of specific gases, and you should be aware again that other gases can interfere with your readings, including hydrogen gas, which will give you a false carbon monoxide reading, and nitrogen oxide, which will give you a false reading of carbon monoxide and hydrogen sulfide. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and power our meter up. We're going to watch it go through its self-test, and then we're going to do a fresh air setup. During that power on self-test, it's going to give us a lot of information that shows us the meter is ready for use. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn that button on, and as soon as I do this, you're going to see all display segments in that screen activated. You're going to hear the audible alarm sounds. You'll see the LEDs light up in the back, and you'll hear the vibrating alarm indicator go off that shows you the audible and vibrating alarms are actually working. So all segments activated. I can hear the vibration and the audible alarm. It's going to show us information about the software that's installed on the device. It's going to discovery of sensors. It's going to show us that it's looking for the sensors to make sure that the ones it expects are actually installed and that they're working. This doesn't verify that they're accurate. This just verifies that they're installed, they're within their service life, and they are functioning. After this, it will go through what type of combustible gas it's and toxic gas it's calibrated for. It'll show low alarm limits and high alarm limits, and OSHA exposure limits, date and time, and its last calibration date. Showing last calibration date, it's going to give us the option to do a fresh air setup. And to do that, we're going to press the power button there. It's detected that fresh air is there and at levels it expects, so it gave us a pass notification. Now you can also use the arrow key to bypass that fresh air setup if you're not in a fresh air environment, and it will remember what the last fresh air calibration settings were. So if you happen to have to turn this on in an area that could be contaminated, it won't affect your readings that way. So what you can also do on some of these, as I mentioned in the lecture portion, is that you can do an occlusion test by covering over that fresh air intakes, the air intake inlet. On some models of 4-gas meters, that will trigger a clogged response, and the meter will give you an alarm. On our specific meters, it's designed to resist clogging and it won't let you manually occlude that inlet. So you won't be able to do a fresh air inlet occlusion. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to perform a bump test on this meter. A bump test, once again, is a field test that simply confirms the sensors are able to detect the gases that we are monitoring. It doesn't necessarily give you an indication that the sensors are accurately reading those. That's what calibration is for, and we do that once a month. The bump test is a daily check just to make sure the sensors are still operating as we would expect them to operate. So in order to do that bump test, we're going to use a canister of gas. So you can see the canister of gas there. It's got a regulator on there along with the tube, and then it's got the harness which attaches it to the meter. So I'm going to go ahead and attach that harness by snapping it down on the sides to the meter. You can hear it snap into place. I'm going to trigger the bump test by holding the down arrow key. It'll offer to give me a bump test, and I'll hit that power button in order to trigger that bump test to begin. I'm going to turn the gas on, and you'll see the values on that screen change as it detects the gas that's been calibrated for that bump test. Once the bump test is complete, I'm going to turn the gas off and remove the harness. You'll also hear this start to make alarms because once it's done with the bump test, it takes a little bit for those sensors to clear out, and you'll hear an alarm. You can clear that alarm out by hitting the up arrow key, which resets those alarms. Once the other sensors are zeroed out and the O2 has climbed up to 20.8, we're done. That bump test is complete. Now, once again, with that meter, you want to make sure that that screen illuminates, which should happen during that power on self-test. There is data logging that's available. You can connect this to a PC and download all the logs. Right now, we go with analog, the manually handwritten in-house logs of our bump and calibration tests. And you want to make sure that that low battery alarm does work. The only way to really make sure the low battery alarm works is to let it run out. But that low battery alarm will sound if the batteries get down too low. So decontamination, let's review that real quick. You never want to use alcohol wipes, hand sanitizer, solvents, or anything like that to clean this. If it's dirty or dusty, you want to use a soft, dry bristled brush to remove any dust or dirt, and then use a damp cloth to gently clean that off. If any water gets into the air inlet or the audible alarm outlets, just gently shake that out and use a dry cloth to wipe that water up. And there you go. There's your bump test. There's your information about the 4-gas meter. So a review of what you should know by now. You should be able to describe the characteristics of our multi-gas meters. And you should be able to actually perform the procedure for using the multi-gas meter and performing that bump test as outlined in your skill drill 15-3. Once again, I've been your instructor, Roy Smalley, Health and Safety Officer at the Mayville Fire Department.